Hello and good evening, and welcome to Channel 36 WeHo in West Hollywood. And tonight we have a wonderful show, something very different, and I've never had a detective or investigation agency on the show. We have one tonight, and he's on my left, and it's Brian Mathews, and he's the owner of LA Intelligence here in Los Angeles. It's good to have you with us tonight,
My
Brian.
pleasure.
And we were talking before the show started and everything, and I did ask him, I just wanted to talk about dating because I know he's had some cases where they use investigators on the dating services now because there's so much going on out there.
There
right,
is.
Brian?
There's a lot of fraud going on. A lot of women being taken advantage of. And some men.
And men, both
Yeah.
sexes and everything. And you were telling me one. Do you want to mention it about the...
Well, we've had a few with a particular website called Seeking Arrangement, also known as SA. It's a very well-known site throughout the country. It's basically a legal prostitution site. There are literally thousands of women that advertise themselves. Some as young as 19, 20, 21 years old and working their way through college, all the way up to women in their 40s and 50s. I have found that a lot of them lie about their age by at least 2 or 3 years, but that's to be expected.
Right.
But nevertheless, a few come to mind. The first case I think we got with that particular website was a blackmail case. So we had a client who was married. And he found one of these girls on the site, and he was seeing this girl on the site, and she found out that he was married. And she saw him a couple of times and then threatened to blackmail him. So he was very, very nervous because he had 2 small children.
What a mess to be in.
He was in a good relationship with his wife. She had no idea. Now, I'm not condoning infidelity,
right.
But nevertheless, blackmail is still illegal. And so he called me, and he asked me what he thought I can do. And I said, well, generally in a case like this, we would set up a phony profile.
Right.
Okay. And we would try to trap the girl to see if we can get the girl to blackmail us. And in this particular case, I think what I told him to do is I recommended that he agree to pay her, to draw her out.
Right.
And when she showed up, instead of him being there, I was there. And I let her know that she's committing blackmail, which is a felony, and that if she doesn't go away quickly, she's going to wind up going to jail. And she got scared. She got in the car and she ran off.
She just ran off.
Yeah. He was very close to telling his wife. He was debating on whether he should come clean and not worry about her or not say anything. And I said, give me a chance to do my magic. And in that particular case, it worked. Then we had another case. I can't talk in great detail about this one because the litigation is still active on it.
I understand, of course. I understand.
But it was something to the tune where a young lady had made up a profile in a friend of hers name and used her photograph.
Without her
without
knowing it.
Right. And this was...
It sounds like a Lifetime movie.
Yeah, this was done to shed her in a bad light, to show that she was the prostitute, because there was other litigation going on. So I was hired by an attorney who was handling the case. We already had the phony profile set up, so that same profile that we had set up for that previous case, we just kept. So this way it had some longevity to it, which made sense because you can tell by looking at somebody's profile how long they've been a member. So if you see somebody's been a member for 8 or 9 months, you're not going to suspect that they had just set that profile up. I can't really tell you how that one turned out, but there's a huge case going on right now.
It's unreal. I told him, I said he's in a good business today because
this young lady's entire future is at stake because of this one.
Oh, that's terrible. People don't think today. I don't know, and it seems to be getting worse and worse, right?
There is so much fraud going on in this country, but right here in LA, we've got more than we can handle.
But you know what's upsetting? How about when they get into your cell phones?
It's not easy to get into somebody's cell phone, but we do get quite a few phone calls. In fact, we have a case right now where we knew for a fact that the woman's ex-husband was in her cell phone and in her computers, okay, because we put our IT people on his computers and found out that he was in her computers, so we had to set up some security protocols for her. And then we via the email that we knew he was watching, withdrew from the case so he wouldn't think we were still working on it, and then switched over to a different form of communication. This woman is being taken for quite a bit of money by her ex. And, what gets me is that how many people don't do their due diligence in advance? So
because they believe the person. This is the whole thing. They can say, hey, this can't happen to me. Hey, I love him, and I don't believe this is happening to me, right?
There's a lot in the dating sites where I would say middle-aged women, for the most part, get involved with perhaps a young and good-looking man. Okay.
Gigolo.
And a gigolo. And trying to be a little politically correct here, but it is what it is, okay? Yeah. This was, which case was this one here now? I lost my train of thought there for a second. Oh yeah, there was we're talking about the men. So they fall in love with these men, and they see them several times. I guess they get into a relationship or whatever the case may be. And the man comes across as a very financially stable person, but then he'll come up with a very unique story about why he can't get his hands on $50,000 that he has tied up in an investment account somewhere. Can you float me $50,000 for a week or something like that? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. And these are women that probably have millions of dollars in it, and so it's not a lot of money to them, so they get taken. And sometimes they'll get taken 2 or 3 times before they realize that, I don't think this guy is exactly on the level here. So they call us, and I said, ma'am, I wish you would have called me before you started with this guy, because I ran a background report on him, and I could tell just by looking at his report that the guy was been committing fraud all his life.
That's what they should do. They should call investigation, call you up and say, please do a background thing. I feel uneasy. Something's wrong about this relationship.
It's not that expensive these days, because with the internet, they've consolidated all of the information that they can come up on somebody. So I can pretty much run a report and tell you just about everything you want to know about yourself. In one report.
Right.
And it's not terribly expensive. It's a few $100s. So it's worth a few $100s. My favorite saying, which is on the bottom of every one of my emails, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Oh, yeah. On my cell phone, I was getting calls from Belgium and Australia. And I called Verizon. I'll mention it. And I will say, Verizon wasn't nice in the beginning. They gave me a hard time. They said, you were talking to Australia, and you have a bill like $55. I said, I know no one there. I said, I don't call abroad. Well, your phone. It was your phone, and you dialed the number.
A lot of the fraud is being perpetrated by foreigners.
Yeah.
And the reason they're getting away with it is because of the jurisdiction problem. Okay, the FBI is not going to go to Africa or India or whatever country they come from to investigate, and their threshold for an investigation is well over $1 million. So if you don't have a case that's worth at least $1 million, the FBI is not even going to talk to you.
But I got the number, and I looked it up on the computer, and it was a scam. And I called Verizon. I said, why didn't you do that? I have to do all the work. And then they credited me for the call and everything. What is reverse hookup that they're doing? I saw something like reverse hookup, like these professionals are doing.
Reverse hookup?
What could that be?
Well, I'm not familiar with that term. I've never heard that term
Where they
before.
get in, and that's how they get their number. And they say if you go out, you should take your cell phone and turn it not face up, turn it around on the other side, because they could pull your number from another table.
It's called pairing.
What is it called?
Pairing.
Pairing.
If it's an iPhone, it's usually done through the code. iPhones are very, very dangerous because
I have an
iPhones,
iPhone.
there have been software put in iPhones that will that actually turn them into tape recorders and cameras, and
Really?
also GPS devices. So if somebody has your code and you have an iPhone, okay, they know everywhere you go. They can hear everything you're saying, not just talking on the phone, but they can hear you listening to your radio in your car. And it's always the iPhone. Now, the Android's a little tougher. You can't do that with an Android.
Samsung.
Well, Samsung makes Android. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
LG makes Android
Right.
and so forth. But
I never should have
it's mostly the
changed.
Samsungs.
I never should have changed.
So, in our opinion, the Samsungs are a little safer than the iPhones. You have to be really careful about who you give that code
Yeah.
to.
And then I was on the phone and a voice came on, and the next thing I knew, that I check my bank every day, and they said this company took out $100 from England. I said, what? Here it is again. I was on the phone, I heard a man's voice, and whatever he did, he manipulated, he tried to get the money out of the account.
I'll tell you a scam that we worked on recently, which boggles my mind. The client was from the UK. Correction, I'm sorry, the target was in the UK. The client was here. The client had spent, and she was the father of a studio executive.
Okay.
I'm not going to mention which studio, but
Right.
very famous studio. And she called me up and she said, my dad is in his 70s. He's got a lot of money, so he's not. And this is a term that they would use when they find somebody who has a lot of money and gives it up easily. They call him a whale. It's the same term they use at casinos for a high roller.
Okay,
It's
right,
a whale.
right.
And so they got this guy to invest $750,000 into a wooden box that the perpetrators claimed could power an entire city.
Oh my,
A wooden box, no less.
oh my head.
Now, he had already invested $750,000, and he was about to invest another $1 million into this guy's invention. The daughter hired me without the father knowing, and we investigated, only to find out that not only was the whole thing a scam, the box didn't work. A house was actually caught on fire. We saved this guy. I think he was going to write the check like literally the next day. I mean, this woman gave us a glowing review on Yelp. You can read the story on Yelp, actually. But sometimes we catch them and sometimes we don't. But we get so much of this that after a while you develop a resentment, almost a hatred towards these type of people. So I really enjoy getting these guys because it's, you come over here from another country and a lot of fraud is being perpetrated by people that are coming here from South America, Central America, Mexico, the Middle East. Things are not very good over there, okay? And the culture over there is a lot different than it is here. So over there, they do what they need to do to get by. And that's just about anything when it comes to feeding your family. And so when they come over here, they're in that same mindset, okay? And so
That's all that they know. That's
right,
it.
and they know that the laws are very liberal here, and we've got very strict laws. Very hard to convict somebody. You got to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. And because of Prop 47, which I don't know if your audience knows much about, but some years ago there was a vote put out to the public called
Right,
Prop 47. Right. Prop 47 basically stated that unless somebody committed a violent crime, okay, the prosecutors weren't even going to take the case. So we've had more burglaries, I would say, in the last 2 years than I've had in my entire career. And I'm talking about burglaries in excess of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in cash and jewelry.
I know, you hear during the day burglaries, like they had something in Century City, I think, Rolex watch during the day around noontime when they tried to rob. And
Well,
they got
that's
away.
the, yeah,
They
that's
got away with
that's
it.
and that's the problem. They're not prosecuting the cases, and the bad guys know it, so they get away with it. we have a hard time getting any cooperation from LAPD. And you
Because
listen,
they can't keep up with it.
yeah, I have nothing against police, okay? I
Right.
worked for the DEA for a number of years as an undercover pilot. Most of our investigators are ex-cops. I don't blame the police themselves,
No.
but it's hard to motivate a detective to investigate a case when he takes the file to the prosecutor and the prosecutor does nothing with it. So after a while, they say, why bother?
That's upsetting. That's
And
very
because of that,
upsetting.
there's so much fraud going on. Now, Orange County's a little bit different. They're a little bit more aggressive in prosecuting. We've had 3 cases prosecuted. We had a guy named Trotta, okay, and it's all a matter of public record. I don't have a problem mentioning his name. We were hired to locate him and repossess, which we're not really legally repossesses, but confiscate his Range Rover, which was a $125,000 vehicle. He bought it on the East Coast. He made one down payment, shipped the car out here, and didn't pay for it for 2 years. So the finance company hired me not only to find the guy, but
Right.
to try to get the vehicle back.
Right.
We found the guy living in a house on, I think it was here in Santa Monica near 20th. In a house that rents for $14,000 a month. And he was an African-American gentleman, which was unusual in Santa Monica. And I'm like, how does this guy afford to pay this kind of rent? So we checked the courthouse records, and there was no eviction on record. Okay, but what I didn't realize at the time is that they don't post the evictions until 30 days after the case is over. So if somebody's in the middle of an eviction, you're not going to find it. And his car was, he was hiding his car inside his garage. And there was a lot of legal maneuvering that had to be done because the case came out of Carolina. And the attorneys had to transfer the order from Carolina here to LA to compel the sheriff to use force to get the vehicle. So they hired me to keep an eye on this guy. Well, the judge signs the order, and a day before we're ready to go get the vehicle, the guy moved.
So that's it?
That wasn't it. Right across the street from where the guy lived was a cafe. So I said, let me go over there and talk to this guy in the cafe. And I went to talk to him. And I said, do you remember the guy that lived on the corner? And he said, yeah. I go, do you notice that he moved? And he goes, yeah. I go, would you happen to remember the name of the moving company? He goes, I sure do. And he told me. So I called up the moving company. It was an Indian gentleman. And thank God, the bad guy robbed him of all his blankets. Now, when you move, there's a lot, they wrap things in blankets. So he never returned all these blankets. So he was angry at the guy. So he told me where he moved. Now, there was a warrant for the guy's arrest. I mean, this guy had we ran a background on him. He had a 243-page report. I had never seen a background report that long. And he was wanted by Orange County. So we called up Orange County. They went out in the middle of the night. They arrested him at this place that he had just moved into. Now, this is a guy with 2 kids. I think he had 1 kid in college, two grown kids in high school, seniors. He had a daughter. He had a wife.
Those poor families. That's what.
And he's been committing fraud his entire life. He set up a church, I think, in Virginia. Collected something like $2 or $3 million from the congregation, closed the church down, moved out to the West Coast. So, I mean, there was a whole list of things, but he's serving 27 years in state prison right now.
Well, at least
so thank God this was in Orange County, because in LA, I'm not even sure we would have gotten a conviction on this guy. So we got the Range Rover back for the client. He wound up going to prison, and everybody was happy.
What is the worst case that you have had, that you would say, the worst case that you have worked at in one way or another? Whether it's difficult or just the thought of it, you've never had anything like this.
It's going on right now.
Oh, it is?
Yes, and I'll tell you what it is. I have a client who is an actress.
Okay.
I'd be actress, not particularly famous, but nevertheless an actress. Very attractive woman. She's, I think, in her late 40s, but she looks much younger. And she went in for a simple nose job. She woke up 12 hours later. They had experimented on her face. They put implants underneath her cheek. They cut off a piece of her jaw, and they used her in a medical study without her permission. and they allowed students to operate on them. She woke up and looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize herself. She had to fly to Europe and spend $100,000 having her face reconstructed just so she would look somewhat normal.
Okay.
But she doesn't look anything like she did before.
I mean, what doctor did she go to? What school was this? You can't say, I know.
I can say she went to Dr. Frankel because I think his first initial was A. I think his name was Art Frankel, but
Oh, that is so scary.
there are dozens and dozens of victims because I found the study online, okay, and the protocols for the study. He needed 4,700 patients. He was not going to get 4,700 patients to consent to this kind of experimentation, and they were allowing students from USC to operate on these people. So my client herself found 9 other victims. And we were trying to get this on like Fox News or CNN or something like that to get some exposure because there are certain laws that actually protect these doctors. It's not a med mal or a medical malpractice case because there's a 1-year statute of limitations on it. So the 1 year had already passed. However, it is a criminal assault case.
Definitely.
Now, it gets worse. Each one of these women's vaginas were penetrated, and they don't know why. Her cervix was all scratched up. I'm not suggesting sexual rape here, okay, but they were doing
It's like
something.
a horror story.
It is a horror story. I have never heard of anything
my
like it in all my
God.
entire career, and anybody who I ever discussed this case with has never heard. And I felt so bad for this woman. She hired me to try to get her medical records, which we weren't able to get. The medical records are hidden. She thinks she knows where they are, but she only wants her medical records so she can bring them to another plastic surgeon so they can fix her face, because they're afraid to do anything to it because they don't know what these other doctors did. But she's missing a piece of her jaw. She doesn't look remotely the same as she used to. She looks somewhat decent. I mean,
That
she doesn't look
doctor's
as
a
bad.
butcher.
But yeah,
I'm telling you,
yeah.
even to
and
do
he's
it.
continuing to do this. He's been doing it for years.
Is it
And-
what?
and I
Is it
just don't
Beverly
understand.
Hills?
He's around here somewhere, yeah,
And he's still practicing.
still practicing.
I don't know. I just can't understand these things. That I just can't conceive that. And your face, which whenever anyone touched my face,
I felt
even if I
terrible.
had money,
First
I
of all,
just-
the woman had no money. I wound up donating to her GoFundMe page. I felt so bad for her. I sent several letters to Fox News and a couple of other TV stations. I have a relationship with the Inquirer. Every now and again, a client wants to sell their story to the Inquirer.
Right.
They want to put their cheating husband on Front Street
Right.
and put him on the
Right.
front page of newspapers. So, we have connections with a couple of other tabloids, but everything we do is confidential, so we can never release any information without the client's permission. But every now and again, the client wants us to put it out there. So,
Well, I've seen. I'm not mentioning any names, of course, but some celebs have had face jobs. It's scary.
it is.
And these are top stars, and I think, oh my God, look what you did to yourself.
Yeah, it's risky.
Terrible.
It is risky. It's unbelievable what some women will do to look as young as they used to, especially in